Hey everybody, this is John Bruni, and we have a fantastic guest with us today. Professional hockey player Shawn Szydlowski is entering his 10th year as a pro. His accolades, just going to name a few of them, include leading the ECHL in scoring and league MVP in the 2017-2018 season. He was also the captain of the All-Star team in that same season. He has played 552 professional games. He has 477 points and has accumulated, I feel like I got to say it like this, 612 penalty minutes. He has played the past 7 seasons for the Fort Wayne Komets, where he is a fan favorite. There's so much more we could talk about, from the OHL, the AHL, which we'll get into. But welcome to the show, Shawn Szydlowski.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having me. It's quite the intro, making me feel my age anymore.
well, it's awesome. And I want to get into this because, again, entering 10th season as a pro, you're a Michigan man. And, again, I always love to see that we've got some hockey players coming down from Michigan, not just Canada, not just Minnesota. Can you tell us how you became interested in hockey and kind of share about your hockey journey, how you got from that start to where you are today?
Oh, yeah. I guess it was definitely easier for me just growing up in a hockey family, for one. My dad was also a minor professional hockey league player, kind of went a very similar route to me. I've outlasted him playing age, at least, but I think it's a little different now. It's a little different avenue. There's more avenues, I'd say. But yeah, with him obviously being a hockey player, my mom actually played co-ed hockey growing up, up until she was probably mid-40s, I'd say. And I had an uncle who was quite the hockey player. Actually played on Wayne Gretzky's line in juniors. They played together in Sault Ste. Marie. So yeah, we have a long hockey lineage, I'd say. And of course, you had growing up in Detroit. There's just another thing to add to it. And passionate Red Wings fans, you can't grow up in Detroit and not be a Red Wings fan. So it was pretty easy for me.
So your mom played till she in her 40s, co-ed?
Yeah,
no, that's awesome.
It's man, I was impressed. It was kind of a little point of pride for me growing up. It was like, yeah, you want to have a family game, you want to have dad and mom, and I'm confident with my team. But yeah, she's even got pictures from back in the day. She was doing even hockey camps. Gordie Howe had a hockey camp right down the street from our house, and she's got pictures with Gordie Howe on the ice, which Gordie Howe is my dad's favorite player too. So you bring him up, that's basically God to my dad. So yep, that's it.
Well, that's awesome. We talk about Gordie Howe. You've had a few Gordie Howe hat tricks for sure. But let's get into this. You grew up in this Detroit area, going to the Joe. Did you have any hockey heroes personally that you looked up to growing up, or did you have any people that kind of inspired you or encouraged you along the way?
Yeah, I definitely have a couple. Obviously, just who I spoke about, my dad, of course, was my idol growing up. Just great dad for one. Obviously, a hockey player. He was my coach. Growing up all the way until I left, basically my last year before I went off to junior. So he was definitely my first one. As far as my hockey idols, it was Steve Yzerman, without a doubt. Wore the C. 19 was my favorite number because of him. I just his skill too. Everyone talks about him anymore as just the leader he was, but I think people forget he had a couple, at least 1 year where he had 160 points, and that's unheard of even back then. Gretzky did it, Lemieux, those guys, but Yzerman was right up there while they were playing too. So it's he was an easy guy to look up to. Obviously, the person he was off the ice was a huge factor in it as well, and just played a role in who I wanted to be as a person as well. I wanted people to look at me with the respect that I look at Steve Yzerman with, and so that definitely helped. And I'd say the most influential in terms of skill development and just the way I kind of think the game. It was Robbie Vitorik is his name. He was my coach in juniors when I played for the Erie Otters. And I'm convinced there's not a guy on this earth that could break down the game of hockey the way he could, and just such small circumstances that would just blow your mind, to where, I got there as a confident, I was a cocky kid, of course, going, oh, I'm a good hockey player, but you have confidence in your game. You have to, of course. So, I was going in there feeling like I knew how to play the game of hockey. And the second I met him, I realized I haven't even breached the surface. Like, I have the skills. I've thought about the skills, but when it comes to putting, 5 other guys on the ice who are actively trying to take your head off, well, yeah, there's different ways to look at the situation depending where you are. And it's stuff like that. So those were definitely the 3 that played the biggest role in my life. That's for sure.
It's so cool that your dad is one of them, because it just talks about your family dynamic and how supportive that is. A lot of people today do not have that same family dynamic, and so that's just awesome to hear that. Now, one of the crazy things to think about is that you played in the OHL, the AHL, and the ECHL. And there's a lot of differences in those leagues, in those different leagues. Can you kind of share what it's like to play in the different ones, especially like the OHL, where you got the full, mask on, the whole thing? Can you kind of share some of the differences for people that may not know?
Yeah, absolutely. The OHL is what we would call in hockey is junior hockey, juniors for short. But it's basically, as of course, hockey is different than every other sport. You don't, high school to college isn't necessarily the route. You could look at it different ways depending on the player. Of course, now everyone realizes education's a part of it. But, if you're a good hockey player and all you wanted to be is a hockey player, then you might go to the OHL, which is what I did. And that's for the age group of 16 to 20. So if you turn 21 before the start of the season, you're too old for the OHL. So that's kind of how it works. So it's really a pre-development level for pros. They call it minor professional because they pay you $50 a week. So we were definitely rich. But it was comparable to how guys speak about their college experience, right? You're around all the guys. It's fun. It's not professional yet, but you start to see the business aspect, because there are trades allowed in that league. So it was really, fortunately for me, knock on wood, I haven't been traded in my career. So I can't speak to what it's like of having to pack up one morning and just not seeing it coming. That would be very difficult. So that was the OHL. And my last year there, when I was 20, turning 21, fortunately, after the end of our season, I got a call from the Buffalo Sabres and was able to sign a 3-year entry-level contract with them. So that put me in, obviously, the Sabres organization. I didn't make the Sabres my first year, so they send you down to their affiliate in the American Hockey League, who is the Rochester Americans. It still is. So that's where I ended up playing in the American Hockey League, which is it made you realize you're not as good as you thought you were, basically, because it's crazy until you get there and you start to realize the names or guys you've seen, might have been a year or 2 older than you that were the best player at their age group. And then you come to find out all these guys were the best players at their age group. So it's like all of a sudden you're not special. It's like, this is where now it turns to the work ethic. Who puts in the extra work after practice, before practice, who stays in shape, takes care of their body, all that stuff. And that's, especially being on an NHL contract, it's the expectations in the OHL. It's almost individual because everyone's trying to make the NHL. So it goes from individual skill development to, okay, now you're professional. You must do, it's almost an unwritten checklist of things, the way you need to act, prepare yourself, all that stuff. And if you're not doing it, well, you're doing that at the highest level. So if ownership or management sees you not doing these things, well, there's plenty of guys who would love to. So it's kind of, it wakes you up very fast. And just to finish on that, I guess, obviously the ECHL would be the next affiliation down. So we basically, compare it to AA baseball. So we definitely still have a ton of guys on NHL contracts in this league. It's usually younger guys, of course, that just need that extra development. But the league has definitely gotten immensely better since when I first entered about 8 years ago. So it's been crazy to see, really where the game was and how it's changed. Things I like and don't, but the skill is through the roof now.
Yeah, I want to ask a couple of things about that here in a second. But first, when you were in the OHL, then did you live with the Billet family then?
I did, and that's where I was also blessed in my career is that my dad, like I said, we had similar routes, and he played in a league that would basically be the equivalent of the ECHL, but he played in Erie, Pennsylvania, where I played juniors. My mom's from Erie, so that's where they met. So I actually lived with my mom's twin sister. So yes, I got to live with my aunt, uncle, and my cousin for a little bit, and then eventually or actually pretty quickly, my cousin went to college because he's a couple years older than me. So yeah, I was basically just living with my aunt and uncle, and it wasn't too far off from living with my parents. I might have had a little more freedom. But yeah, I got very lucky doing that. And I grew a special bond with my aunt because of it and stuff like that. So it was a cool experience.
Yeah, that's such a blessing that worked out that way. And one of the things I like to say is that, people don't understand the sacrifice that guys make. When we talk about juniors, most of the guys are moving away from their family. You're all in it. It really is a sacrifice and a price to be paid. And it just is a good lesson, I think, for any athlete out there to know is that nobody gets to where they're at without paying the price. And before we get into ECHL, I forgot to talk about this a little bit. We talked about the Joe, and we talked about you being a Michigan man. You got a couple sweet tats, right?
I have a couple, yes.
Do you have my understanding, you have the Ambassador Bridge?
I do. I do. If I wasn't wearing a hoodie, it'd be pretty easy to show you. But yeah, right here I have, it's kind of the Ambassador Bridge going over the top of the bicep. And then kind of under the bridge is the Spirit of Detroit statue, which instead of holding up I forget the name of it, a star, but I replaced the star with an octopus.
That's awesome.
That was my little homage to the Red Wings, because when I got the tattoo, I was actually still with Buffalo. So I couldn't I couldn't put a Red Wings logo on my arm. Obviously, they'd be like, that looks new. Are you telling us something? So, of course, I didn't want to do that. I was a fan of Buffalo at the time because they gave me my opportunity. So I didn't want to do that and disrespect them. But also, coming from Detroit, like I said, the Red Wings passion I could compare it to Fort Wayne. It's your hometown team. Nobody's allowed to be a fan of anyone else, and it's in your blood.
I love that. So I had jumped back to the E for a second. I just want people to know that because I just think that's, you can't get more iconic than the Ambassador Bridge.
Yes.
How has the ECHL changed over the last 7 years? Because hockey in general has changed. We've talked before. I grew up watching, the Flint Generals. This is back in the original IHL. It was much more physical, much more clutch and grab. The speed was much different.
Yes.
But how has the ECHL shifted? And especially, can you speak a little bit about how hockey in general, it's becoming a smaller group because there's less and less leagues. So you really are like at that AA, AAA is AAA, where before there was all kinds of competing leagues. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, of course, the NHL affiliation is what definitely changed the ECHL a bit. Of course, you add NHL contracted players to any league if they're contracted in the NHL. So obviously, someone at the highest level saw, a deserving reason for this person to have that. So a lot of those guys are injected into this league now, and they're really trying to make it another developmental league. And I think if they could make it as competitive as the American Hockey League, they probably would. But of course, there's only 32, about to be 33 NHL teams. So it's just, you can't place that many players to make up two leagues. But we got a lot of those guys. That's how I came to Fort Wayne. I was on my NHL contract with Buffalo. And when I got sent here, I was literally the only person on an NHL contract on the Komets that year, which last year or the year before that, we probably have 5, 6, 7 at a time, and they're there most of the year. And other teams have more, less, stuff like that. So that's how really this league's changed. My first year coming in here, like if you played the Komets from that year to the Komets we'll have this year, I think the game would be 10-0 this team, like 2021 Komets. So that's the best way I could compare that. But just as far as hockey in general, yes, like you talked about the old IHL days, I grew up watching, the Detroit Vipers. We had Detroit Vipers.
The Palace.
So we went to so me and my dad would drive me out to Auburn Hills. We'd go watch those games. And those guys, that was the American Hockey League back in the day. Actually, like a ton of guys went to have went on to have successful NHL careers from that league. And it was really good hockey. I mean, we saw Gordie Howe's last official professional shift was there. Sergei Samsonov was one of my favorite players growing up because he was on the Vipers. He went on to play for the Bruins and put up a lot of points in his short career. And then they also had guys, tough. I'm trying to think of Darren Banks. And he was just this humongous guy that would just, I remember watching those fights, like my eyes just peeled open going, oh my, like this eventually happens in the sport I play. So it was kind of like, a little eye-opening experience there. But back then it was a lot of the clutch and grab, like you said. You're allowed to basically hook guys with your stick and go for a ride, really is what they used to call it. And they've minimized all that type of stuff to allow it to be maximum speed now. But the thing I don't like about that is not that the players aren't deserving, but I see a lot of skilled, fast hockey players now. But the main component in having success in any sport is being able to think that sport, being able to read other players, certain situations, a guy's body positioning, whether it be, I could, compare football to hockey in that sense. Anything you could compare it to that. If you know how to analyze the sport you're in, that's how you're going to have the most success. It's like every guy is so closely matched in skill, speed, work ethic. You have to be anymore. So if you can't think the game, it's going to make the quality of the game worse because these guys are just going to go up and down the ice 100 times. But, it doesn't mean you're going to have success doing that. So I just think there needs to be some exception to that nowadays. It can't just be 100 miles an hour and go chase the puck. I mean, it's really not that fun. Like, wouldn't you want to play with the puck? So that's just the way it's changed. It's went from a lot of fighting to even the OHL. I'll tell you this one. In the OHL, when I played there, there were at least 3 to 4 heavyweights. And heavyweights, I mean, these guys just fought for a living. They don't focus on playing the game. They're there to police the game. And I think that's a very essential component to hockey, to be honest. But with that comes injuries, just like anything. But, there's professional boxing, there's MMA, there's all this stuff. So it's like it can't be frowned upon because it's allowed in other sports. So that's just how I feel about it. But nowadays, the OHL, I was going to say, I think there were 3 to 4 guys who had between 60 and 65 fights that year, my first year. We played 68 games. So that is almost a fight a game. And there were plenty of guys in the 50s, 40s, 30s, like you could go down. There were more each category down. So it's like guys usually had at least 10 fights a year, which now in the OHL, they have a rule. You're only allowed 3 fights. And the next one after that, automatic suspension, and then your suspension multiplies. So it's like, I get it at that level because you don't want to see a young kid get hurt. Do they need to be doing it? No. But you need to know how to protect yourself because you're going to be thrust into that situation one time or another, even if you don't want to be. It's just it's the nature of the sport and life. I mean, you could do something wrong today and someone might want to fight you. So it's like, I believe in self-protection, not instigation. But if someone wants to, handle something physically, well, you don't know who I am and you don't know what I know type of thing. That's the way I look at it. And that's the way the game's changed is it's went away from the fighting, even talking about getting it out of the game completely, which I don't think will ever happen.
Yeah. I want to get more into fighting in a minute, but I do want to touch on something. I don't think that people are saying, hey, we want to go back to the old Laval Chiefs days. How crazy that league was up there at one time. I don't think anybody's saying that, but it really has been, to me, just as somebody who's an observer, and we were talking a little bit on the phone this week, it seems like there's so much more stick work and cheap shots and all kinds of stuff going on because you don't carry an enforcer. You're talking about the days of the OHL. There were guys that their goal was to become an enforcer. There was a spot on the roster for that guy. And now today there is no spot on the roster for a pure enforcer. Do you think that because of they've pushed to kind of take fighting out of the game, that guys take a lot more liberties with skill players?
Absolutely. And I was going to stumble upon that fact had I not been rambling the question before, but that's why I believe it needs to stay in the game. And I don't think there's a guy in the game, honestly, not one, who would say, let's get rid of fighting. And that's including all those skill guys. Because as you said, the first game they take away fighting, that skill guy is target number one, and everyone's going for him because now they know no one's going to come and punch him in the face.
Yep.
And that's just, it's the like, what would society be if you knew no one could punch you or would be there? It wouldn't be society. You know, it's just like, that's the way it is. And it's, like Wayne Gretzky had a quote basically too, saying, if I didn't have Marty McSorley, I would have never had the career I did.
Yep.
Marty McSorley did some dumb stuff. One of the probably most vicious incidents I've ever seen in hockey, which the Donald Brashear smacked him in the head with his stick, knocked him unconscious. And, you know, that's when I think that might have been honestly the incident to kind of make people go, oh, this game's a little too violent. And it's unfortunate because if you get to know those enforcers, the one thing everyone says, and I can obviously attest it's true, they're the nicest human beings in the world because they're humble, because they know there's people willing to fight them. They've lost fights. They know they're not the biggest, baddest person on earth. They have faults, and that humbles you. And that's why I think this game's amazing and creates unbelievable human beings because of that fact. You might come in as a cocky kid, but the first time you eat a fist, you're like, okay, that wasn't that fun. So I think I'm going to calm down next game. That's what happens. And that's why fighting needs to stay in hockey.
Do you think that particular, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole here, but just your personal opinion, do you think that incident was kind of like the end of the code, or is the code still followed a little bit?
The code's definitely followed as long as they know fighting's allowed, right? Because, like, yeah, there might not be a big 6'6", 250-pound guy just waiting to, you know, that's all he wants to do. But, you know, you run across other guys that, like, once you get to pro, everyone knows how to fight just because you have to learn at some point because, like I said, it's inevitable. So I think, you know, even the toughest guy knows, I go do something stupid. Well, every game I'm going to have to fight that guy or this guy's coming. Like, you do the math in your head. You're like, is this worth it? Like, because if I hurt that guy, I'm going to get hurt by 4. And that's like, you know, in the OHL, I had to pick teams where I was necessarily louder than I was the other night because I could play one team with 4 heavyweights. And I go, okay, even if I fight the smallest of the heavyweights, guess what? Number 2 is asking you to fight. Number 3, 4, and then they're all coming after you because you showed you're willing to fight, and that's what they have to do to stay in the game. So it's like you could go on for days about this, and yes, down a rabbit hole about that, but it's just yeah, it's not much of that anymore. But there's definitely a code. There's guys that follow it, and I respect guys who do, in the sense that, you know, there's been a couple skilled guys who may have hit someone, done something to hurt a guy, and I've been the one to go after them. And if they willingly drop the gloves and own up to what they did, after that, you guys are just like, it's that respect where now we can have a conversation on the ice. Like, it's hilarious, but there's a clip of George LaRock, if you know who that is, who's a very big heavyweight, French black guy who lined up next to another heavyweight in an NHL game. And he just looks at him and he goes, "Hey, bud, you want to go?" The other guy says, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, good luck." And they drop the gloves and they tee off on each other's faces. But it's literally that conversation. Everyone thinks we're violent and we're so mad, like, oh, I want to hurt this guy. No, guys actually just, hey, you want to fight? Sure. It's literally that is what starts half of the fights in hockey.
So I'm going to jump ahead to this because this is, I know people are going to be just fascinated by this process because you yourself have had some great scraps. And so I want to get into a couple things. First, do you have a favorite scrap, or would you say there was my favorite dance partner was blank? Do you have a favorite one or a favorite guy when you knew it was going to be, all right, it's on?
of my own.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't call it a favorite because it's not like I ever like go out there like, because if I know the other guy's tough, especially, that's like you don't rest easy on that. Like, see, like if you say you do something stupid or you just know like that you fought a guy before and he may ask you, you don't sleep that night. Like you're like, oh, like this is coming. Like you're almost like queasy the whole day. Like, but then you get in the situation, it's weird. It's just normal. So it's just, but you have to think about it. It's that buildup that's just terrible. But there's a guy back in the OHL that I I would say it was my favorite only because that's when I kind of proved to myself that
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to fight these guys because it was a guy named Harry Young, but he played for the Windsor Spitfires. He was, you know, 6'5", probably 220 pounds, and I'm just barely 6 foot, 195 pounds. So I knew what I was getting into, but that year we just didn't have anyone. We lost all our heavyweights, and that's it was that transition period where it was starting to fade away, and I was the only one big enough or willing to do it. And I fought him our season opener of my last year in the OHL in Windsor. So of course it's sold out. Windsor's got a great environment already. And I fought him off the very first face-off of the game. Not even a second was played, and we just went at it. And I mean, if I look at myself in that fight, I'm kind of like not embarrassed, but like I didn't know how to fight as well as I do today back then. But I was just proud of myself for going in there, and I didn't get beat up, and I ended up fighting him a couple more times in the same season, and that's where I always respected him too, because he was a scary guy. He wasn't nice to you during the game, but there was that respect factor, the code of, hey, we did it. So it's not like he's coming back the next shift trying to break my leg with his stick. No, he's actually probably going to leave me alone until his team needs a momentum boost, and then he's gonna be like, hey, we got to go again. And it's just that little respect thing. So him, and then there's definitely a guy in this league that fans would know, but Dyson Stevenson is his name, but he played on Allen, and we had a couple very good fights. Fortunately got the better of him the second one, but our first one was definitely, I couldn't call a winner. We were both just passionate. He's even probably like an inch or two smaller than me. So it was just like guys who are willing to do it and competitive, and those are fun. I mean, it's not fun the next day when you wake up with sore hands and a sore face, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and then you kind of live on, as a legend as far as they're going to re-show that thing over and over again. And what I want to do is to have people kind of understand, a little bit, and we're going to get into skill stuff in a second, but the psychology of a fight. I think a lot of people don't understand all the different reasons that there could be a fight. From what I've seen from you sometimes, it's a response to an egregious hit. Like, I mean, that's one of the things I love, and I think that's what fans love about you, is you're always willing to stand up for your teammates. But sometimes, I've seen guys, are there times during warm-ups when a guy will go out, to center ice and say, you willing to go tonight? You want to go tonight? Does that ever happen too?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And yeah, and no, I appreciate your sentiment, but I've always just looked at myself as, like a protector, right? Like I know some guys aren't willing to do it. Some guys aren't good at it. So it's like, I know I can, I know I will. So it's just that type of thing and also, it works in your benefit because especially if you can play the game as well. I fight one tough guy on one team. That whole team goes, not fighting him. And it's just like that. Guys on the ice, they'll stay away from me. They don't finish their hits on me. They don't slash me. They don't cross-check me. They want to be my buddy. They'll come up at face-offs. Hey, how's it going tonight? I'm like, I don't know you. But it's that type of thing where you gain that respect of, all right, not going near him. So there was that. And then, there's definitely, fans have seen us in warm-ups for sure. Our whole team, two teams at the red line, not even, we're basically face to face. And there's a lot of, words being said and not so kind things about people's mothers and stuff like that. But, it is what it is. It's also mental warfare, right? Like
Absolutely.
stuff like that. There's a lot of guys too who are very loud that will never fight. So, but they're very successful because they get it under everyone's skin, and unfortunately, you don't focus on playing the game then. You just want to kill that guy. So there's a lot of that stuff too. And yes, a lot of that's in warm-ups, which is why, you know, you don't really see stuff happen. Or a lot of the times though, that specific thing happens is because there was something cheap done in the previous game. And then say a heavyweight's back in the lineup or something like that. And he's going to be the one, yes, at the red line saying everything to everybody who wants one tonight type thing. And you really only see it with teams who have those big, tough, real tough guys and stuff like that. And we've had a couple with Colorado, Toledo, Kalamazoo. It's just not much usually happens out of them. There's never usually fights, but that's a thing back in the IHL. Oh, that's a team fight. That's 20 on 20.
Yep.
That just doesn't happen anymore. There'll be too many suspensions, fines. It's something you just have to be aware of nowadays.
Yeah, you don't see too many line brawls anymore, but I still say it seems like once a team has a line brawl, I don't want to just belabor this point, but it really brings them together. There's a bonding that happens that can't be explained.
No, it's true. I mean, to be honest, it's a guy, say I get hit from behind or something and I'm hurt, and I know my teammate, my brother, is going to come be willing to put his health on the line because of that's just, yeah. So that's exactly why it's a growing experience. Cause you know, if your house is getting robbed and someone heroically came and saved your house, wouldn't you be grateful to them?
Absolutely.
It's the same thing with hockey. And it's just, you notice that it's like, hey, this guy's willing to do whatever it takes to win. I want to play with that guy.
I hope that you're enjoying this podcast, and we're going to be getting back to our guest in just a moment. But I want to share a quick word from our sponsors. The Pressing Limits podcast is brought to you by ZionMissionaryChurch.net, where you can listen and watch messages, you can share prayer requests, or even find out how to plan a visit. And also by NeuroPowerSource.com. These are resources for your mind, your body, and your spirit. And you're going to find all the recommended supplements and gear I use, including the Be Strong bands, the new Juve 3.0 system, Clear Light infrared saunas, and so much more. You're going to want to be sure to check it out. I love it. And, you know, we talk about the team for a second. One of the key parts of being a professional hockey player is you guys spend a lot of time on the road. Can you tell people what road life is like? And do you have any great, crazy road trip stories that you can share? Any great pranks that happened on the road that you can share? Protect the innocent, I guess, here.
Yeah, no, there's a ton. Sure, I'm sure there'd be a few if I was retired that I would let go, but I'll, have me back on in a few years and we'll go down that hole. But really, travels, it's not glorious, at least not in this league, nor is it really in the American Hockey League. I mean, it's a lot of bus trips, and fortunately, our travel is probably some of the best in this league that we could get. I mean, at least all the teams in our division, our longest bus trip is 4.5 hours, which you could go to some divisions, you're talking 12, like consistent 8, 10, 12-hour bus trips. And yeah, you get a sleeper bus, which means, 20 cots or, guys can lay down and stuff like that, which sounds better. It is better when you have a longer trip, but it's still, you're not doing what you'd do if you flew, half the time, stuff like that. So, but a lot of times in hotels, it's awesome though. You love being on the road because you're forced to just be around the guys. And yeah, you're just literally hanging out with the guys. And that's where it becomes the most fun. You go out to dinners, you hang out in the rooms, you play cards, whatever guys want to do. It's just, you get to experience another city together. So it's, guys go off and, have dinners, go to bars, when we're allowed to, stuff. And it's just it's harmless fun. But yes, of course, stories can come from that, and just funny stuff another guy did. Maybe a guy drank too much one night, and you just it's funny in retrospect. It's not so funny when you're the guy missing like the bus or the flight the next day because you're responsible for your own travel at that point. So you can get yourself in a little mess. But I guess I have like the best travel story I guess I could say at least is the last lockout year in the NHL, which was 2012. That was my second year of my NHL contract. Well, there was no NHL that year, so everyone was, playing in whatever league, basically like this year, wherever you could find a spot. And I ended up playing in the Central Hockey League, which the Komets actually just moved out of. I played for the Fort Worth Brahmas down in Fort Worth, Texas. There were only 6 teams in that league, and that was the IHL. It was the IHL. Your travel was awful. We had a 45-minute bus ride to Allen, right down the street in Dallas, luckily. After that, the next closest was Tulsa, which I think was 6 hours. So we played, there was a team in Arizona in our league, and that's a 19-hour bus trip from Fort Worth. And that's just like unbearable to begin with. So we go there, we play a couple games on the weekend, whatnot. We get back on the bus, of course, to go home after the second one. And we're probably driving for about an hour or two, I'd say. And I have my headphones in watching a movie or something, and I hear all this commotion all of a sudden, like yelling. And so, of course, I take my headphones off and I look out like down the aisle, and it's our coach just screaming at our bus driver. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, I haven't felt any potholes. We're not missing like, what happened? And come to find out, our bus driver drove 2 hours in the wrong direction.
Oh, man.
How that happens, I still have no idea. And this isn't like a Fort Wayne to Toledo trip.
Yeah.
It's 19 hours already. You just made it into a 23-hour bus ride. And that was pretty miserable. But even after that, like, somehow one of our veteran players at the time got into it with our coach in that whole spiel. And like, they literally got into like a wrestling match in the middle of our bus, and like our coach gets up bloody, our players got his shirt ripped in half, and we're just like, guys, we got we got 21 hours to go. Like, come on, like, let's just, if anything, someone go wrestle the bus driver and chuck him out the window or something, because I want to get home. But just seeing that happen was just like, it was just a wild story. I don't think many people get to experience, nor should they, but it's a funny memory now.
Oh, man, that's great. And a couple things here. How important is chemistry to a team, and what are some of the things that you do or try to do to keep or build on that chemistry? And what does it take to be a leader in the locker room? Because, as the locker room goes, you can have all the talent in the world, but if guys don't gel, if they don't work together, if these lines aren't cohesive, nothing seems to be working. So how important is it, and what are some of the things that you do to maintain or even build on that?
It's massive. I mean, I honestly think it's, in a team sport, there's no one trait that could match it, I don't think, because I don't know if there's a recipe to chemistry per se, because maybe it comes natural between a couple guys, stuff like just a couple players, like the Sedin twins in Vancouver. I mean, they're brothers. So, I mean, that's just something you're born with in that case. But some other players are just, they complement each other, I guess. So you could look at it that way between, maybe a forward line or a defense pairing, a power play, what may have you. But I honestly think it's just the environment more than it is so much chemistry. It's, you want to feel like you're a part of a team, the team as a whole. There's no cliques. There's no asshole veteran, excuse my language, that's just going to look down on the rookies and treat them terrible. Because that's how it was when I got into pro. And to be honest, like, my first year in Rochester, like, I wouldn't say there was a bad guy on the team whatsoever. I loved them all, but it was very cliquey. Like, the older guys hung out with the older guys, the young guys who weren't on an NHL contract kind of hung out together, and then everyone in between. It was like, you never went to the bars. It was rare you went to the bar as a whole entire team. Mm-hmm. Like, here, I'm just accustomed to that in Fort Wayne, because we've just luckily had that environment, because Fort Wayne's just a successful franchise on its own. So it attracts, some of the best guys are guys who just want to win. And that's where you're going to find that chemistry, is guys who are actually committed to the same goal off the bat. So it's really, my focus anymore is just one of the older guys, is making every guy feel welcome. It's not like I have to invite them over to my house every day to hang out or like do anything nice for them. It's just, in the morning, hey, how you doing? You're just shooting the breeze with guys and just making them feel welcome, making them feel like, you care about them, stuff like that, because you do. I mean, there might be a guy here or there who's just different, a different type of guy that, you know, back in the day, you would have been shunned. You would have been like, no one's, that guy is weird. I'm not, hey, I've never got that mentality in just like anybody, or not even in a sport. Just like, why you can't, like, how does that affect your life? You don't live with the guy. So why do you got to treat him like shit? It just doesn't make sense to me. So, instead of hazing guys, I really believe, like, I heard a great quote from, I forget whether it was a documentary or what, but a military, I believe it was a Navy SEAL operator, but he said, why would I ever haze this young guy coming into, his boot camp or whatever? He goes, if I have to bring that guy into a battlefield and I've treated him like shit the whole time I've known him, do you think he's really going to care if I die or not? No. So why would I not bring him along, show him I care about him? That's only going to help the team have success. So that's just how I look at it anymore, is off with the hazing, bring everybody in. If someone does something they shouldn't, okay, have a man-to-man talk with them. You don't embarrass them. You don't make them do that. It's just like, it is what it is. There's a certain way to handle things. And I think just being open and honest with people, it's just an easy thing for me, I guess. So I'm not afraid to have those type of talks with anybody, and I'm not afraid to associate myself with anybody that other people may think is weird or whatever. It's just, that's how I am. And I think, the world actually could probably use more of that.
That's fantastic. Great points. Give us a little insight, especially for people who don't know, some of just all that goes on. Can you give us just an insight to what game day looks like? What does your mental and physical preparation look like that day? Personally, do you have any superstitions like garbage goals? Do you ever put the stick in the garbage can? Do you name your sticks after girlfriends or ex-girlfriends? Changing your routine? Do you have any of that stuff? Can you just give us insight to what it's like on game day?
Yeah. I mean, I see there's a lot of guys are definitely very superstitious in the way they like to do things, but I think it's more just like you find a routine because it prepares you. So I don't put my left glove on first, or like before I don't do anything like that. I've just never, I used to try some stuff like that, but then I'd be like, well, I'm still having bad games. So like, this is doing nothing for me. So I think it's just finding a place that you're comfortable. But it is very routine because someone tells you where to be, when to be, and you just know what you're doing every day. Which, side note, I think is what was the worst part about this whole COVID situation for anyone, is because you didn't have that structure in your life. But it's really, we have a morning skate every day of the game, usually, at least if it's the first game of the week, or you haven't played, that many games in a week, or else, you probably wouldn't. But we usually have a 10 a.m. morning skate, as they call it. It's no longer than 20 minutes even. And then you can stay on the ice if you want. Most guys get off, get a little stretch, stuff like that, and you shower up, go back home. And a lot of guys, make their pasta, chicken, whatever. You make your pregame meal. Most guys usually end up taking a nap and get to the rink probably, at least 2 hours early. And then it's a lot of just mental preparation from there. Of course, you do your stretches, your warm up, stuff like that. But other than that, it's really just not that intricate for me. I'm just really, I'm going to come home, I'm going to make my food, take my nap, go to the rink, warm up, play a hockey game. That's basically game day for me. Other guys probably have some wacky stuff you might get a kick out of, but it's just, I've never been that guy.
Well, what's it like to play in Fort Wayne? The fans really have embraced your hardworking style of play. Like, they really have embraced you and what you stand for. It's kind of like, I don't like to use this because overused, but you have your own brand of hockey. Like, I think people really appreciate the fact that, they work all week. They know that they're spending their hard-earned dollars, and they know that you're going to leave it all on the ice. So what's it like, though, to play with a city where people really get behind you and to be a fan favorite in a place like Fort Wayne?
That's the reason why I'm still here. It's just as simple as that. I've never been the type of guy to pick my hockey team because of where they're located. And nor did I really pick Fort Wayne in the beginning. Like I said, I was sent here the first year I played here. And to be honest, my initial reaction, of course, being on NHL contract, I was just like, oh, I don't want to go anywhere. This isn't as good as where I want to be. And it was just, I looked at it the wrong way because I didn't know anything about the city. I knew of the Komets. I just knew the name. I didn't really know much other than that. So you're thinking like Fort Wayne, Indiana, like it sounds like the middle of nowhere, just like, so that's just how you feel about it. And then, you get here and the first time you play on home ice and there's at least 7,500 people in the stands, mostly every weekend, it's 9 to 10,000. When you score a goal and you hear that, that buzzer go off and just everyone's going bananas, it's just like, that's where I pick to play. And that's why after I was off my NHL contract, I've been back every year. It's because I just love that passion. They're used to winning. They want to win. They make it hard on other teams. It's, it's just met a lot of great people here. And other than that, the organization itself, just that's why people want to come here. They hear nothing but good things. And that's when we talked about the chemistry. It adds that value, right? Like, this team is a professional organization and they win and that's all they care about. That's where I want to go. So that's just how I've been. And I want to play in a place that is passionate about hockey. I don't want to play on a beach where there's 900 people in the stands. I don't care about that. Like, I care about hockey. That's why I choose to do this as a living. If I wanted to live in Florida, just to live in Florida, I'd quit, go find a job. I'd probably make more money. So there you go. It's just and that's as simple as it is for me.
And one thing that's kind of unique about Fort Wayne is they have their hockey smart fans. Most of them, they understand the game. I'm sure you've been down there, and they like to make the calls for the officials. Like too many men on the ice. I'm sure you heard that a million times, but it really is a different thing when you have people that understand the game, and so it's just a unique place. People that are listening, we have people from all over that listen. It's really hard to put the dynamic of what it's like in Fort Wayne to kind of do it justice. And speaking of that, being in this league and playing for the same team, as long as you've gotten to do that, do you have a favorite team that you like to play or a favorite barn besides, the Coliseum that you like to play? Like, just like when you're in here, it's on, or, I've had some of my best games at this place. Is there some things like that?
Easy answer. It's Toledo.
Okay.
It's not even a question for us. It's just, they've been our rival since I got here, right? They've always two organizations that win, and they're very close in proximity, always in the same division, always see each other in playoffs. And just the way it's went for me too. And you might think I'm crazy for it, but we used to just get beat by Toledo every year in playoffs. Like, you see you're matched up against Toledo, you're like, ugh, like at first, like, ugh, like I don't want to, like, you're afraid, right? And that's just natural. Like, if you play a team that's beat you all year long, you're like, well, I think I know how this is going to go type thing. But fortunately, the last 4 or 5 years, especially, we've been very neck and neck. And when we go in there, they are very similar to Fort Wayne fan base, even probably a little nastier. But they're very passionate and they will yell at the other team. They're very loud. It's always packed. So it's an intimidating place to play. But like you said, when you go to Toledo, you're in for a hockey game, and you always get nervous going to play in that rink. Even if you have a better team that year, you still know someone's going to yell at you, or it's just a lot of obscenities being yelled at you constantly in that arena. And especially during the national anthem, when there's any pause, you hear a couple, F you, Sedlowskis and stuff like that. So I'm always waiting for it. So it's pretty funny.
That's awesome. Just a couple more things. What advice would you give to any young hockey players out there, any athlete in general that's young, and a lot of young people that listen to this? What advice would you give them? Just some blanket things. Here's some things that you can do that'll not only make you a better athlete, but a better person.
don't compare yourself to anyone else. That is the most detrimental thing I've learned from experience and seen every single year. And everyone does it, right? In every walk of life, it doesn't even have to be an athlete. Like, you could be an accountant, but someone made more money than you. You're like, oh, okay, that guy's better. What do I have to do? And you feel worse about yourself. And it's not, it's the best motto is it's you versus you, because you can push yourself to those limits, past those limits, and it becomes a mental game. And everyone has those physical attributes. So why compare yourself to that guy? Because you're both very similar. It's just, it's tough because that's what I did when I first went on my NHL contract. Well, my first NHL training camp, like, I was a hockey fan, so I was just like, oh my God, like, I got to compete against him for a job. I was like, that's when all of a sudden it's real. And, it could be in a range of emotions, especially if you're not playing, don't make it to where you want to be, stuff like that. So it's honestly for every kid, just let them have fun. Like, and that's all I want. I've seen too many, especially hockey parents growing up, that made their kid do this or go home and work out or, shoot all these pucks or yell at them during the games. That's like, it's just like, that can destroy anybody. And, even guys our age, if we're playing a game and you got someone yelling at you, telling you what to do all game, you're not going to feel great about yourself. It's just, why would you? So that's just it. I mean, know what your strengths are and don't worry about a single other thing. That's it. It's just you focus on you. And you know what? It might not be good enough, but at least you stayed true to yourself and you did not try to conform to anything else, because that just builds your own self-confidence in the rest of your life. Is just, hey, I did this the right way, my way. You're content. So just enjoy it, have fun. That's all it is. It's like, it's still fun for me. That's why I play. I don't play to necessarily win a championship. I just have fun. Like, if I played to win a championship, I think I would have quit because I haven't won one yet. So it's really all about enjoying it, because it does get to a business at our age.
Well, that is fantastic advice. That's life-changing. Last question, and it's kind of a two-parter. Is there anything else that you would like to share, and how can people learn more about you or find out more about you and your career and what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as just finding out about me, I'm not as active as I used to be on social media per se. I mean, I think, Facebook, I don't really use Facebook anymore. I just it's too much drama for me right anymore. It's a lot of, I don't like the social, I could go down a wormhole about all that. So there you go.
I'm with you.
Yeah. But I use the most probably Twitter and Instagram. So they're both at Sedlowski 19. Unfortunately, my last name is not as it sounds, but it's you can go to the Komets page and it's SZYDLOWSKI19. So that would be it. And as far as other stuff I'd like to share, no, I don't think so. I mean, I almost feel like I could go in reverse now, and there's a bunch of stuff I'd want to ask you, to be honest, because the stuff you do is mind blowing and fascinates me big time. And I think I think that's the best part about being an athlete too, is you admire other athletes and just what humans are capable of, right? Like, you see the body get pushed beyond limits, and it goes to show how strong the mind is in doing all the stuff we do. Is just, you could back down from a challenge, or you go back out and try it again and find out, guess what? On the fifth time I did it. Well, now I know I can do it. And then it's just amazing watching people have success. That's the one thing I wish this world was more like, is people wanting good things for others and not going, I deserve that. Then what are you doing for it? It's just like, people want everything for free, which is what social media is. It's a place to vent. And, basically it's a platform for people to complain and not do anything about it. They complain about issues that they don't actively try to fix themselves. And that's why I just stay off it. It's a lot of negativity. And like I said, for kids, like, that's what you can't do. You can't get sucked into that life of, to complain. It's like, there's too many good things. I've met way more good people, fortunately, than bad. But some of those good people say outrageous things on social media. So it's just, life's a confusing thing. So it's just have fun, enjoy your life, surround yourself with good people. And that's what it is.
That's awesome. Folks that are listening today, I want to encourage you, if the Komets are ever in your town, and they travel all of the United States, if they're ever in your town, make sure that you go to see a game and you go to watch Sid, because you will not be disappointed. He will bring it, and you will definitely get more than your money's worth. I want to thank our guest today, Shawn Szydlowski, for investing in all of our listeners today. Thank you for being on the show.
No, thank you, John. I appreciate it. And, like I said, admire what you do. And I love the platform for the message to get across. I love this stuff, and I listen to a lot of podcasts myself, and yours is now on my list. So I wish you guys nothing but success in the future.
I also want to thank our sponsors, ZionMissionaryChurch.net, NeuroPowerSource.com, our podcast producer, Drew Kiespert, video director, Jolyn Thomas, head of talent relations, Mr. Fairfax Hackley. Be sure to rate us and subscribe to the Pressing Limits podcast, and follow us on Instagram for the latest episodes. For more ways to watch and listen to this podcast, check out the Pressing Limits podcast website.